Welcome everyone. My name is Jim Underdown. I'm the Executive Director here at the Center for Inquiry, and welcome to Café Inquiry, where we take a certain topic of interest and learn a little bit about it and then open it up for discussion. And that is exactly what we're doing here tonight. At the beginning, categorically, there is absolutely no scientific link between vaccinations and autism. Zero. At least 20 studies out there, all confirming this, 100% confirming this. No relationship between vaccinations and autism. Now, there may be some other legitimate concerns. We'll talk about that, about the safety of vaccinations and various rights and issues surrounding them. That's all legitimate. But let's start with that first idea. But to get this conversation started is Derek Bartholomaus. By day, he is a post-production supervisor. By weekend and by night, he is a case-hardened skeptic. He is one of the steering members of the Independent Investigations Group, has been with this group for a long time, and he recently started, and I'll talk about that too, but he recently started a website called the Jenny McCarthy bodycount.com, and which I think is aptly named, and he'll tell you about that and some of the other dangers surrounding not getting your vaccination shot. So with that, please welcome Derek Bartholomaus.
Hello. Quick question. Is there anyone here who is not vaccinated or who has not vaccinated their children? Great. 0 hands went up. Just prior to a few months ago, I didn't really know that much about this. Just kind of vaguely heard about rising cases of vaccine-preventable illnesses. There are several outbreaks of measles last year in 2008. And listening to various podcasts such as The Skeptic's Guide to the Universe, as well as reading the blogs of P.Z. Meyer and Phil Plait, there's a lot of talk about Jenny McCarthy and how she's advocating people not to get vaccinated. And over the year, they started referring to her as having a body count. And in February of this year, I decided to figure out what it was. And as of this weekend, that's what it is. And this is not complete. This is still an undercount. As of April 11th, 2009, 18,098 vaccine-preventable illnesses and 160 vaccine-preventable deaths have occurred. And the anti-vaccination movement has actually existed longer than vaccines. Prior to the smallpox vaccine being created by Edward Jenner in 1798, and there are people like Reverend Edward Massey in 1722 gave a sermon entitled "The Dangerous and Sinful Practice of Inoculation," and the idea being that it is against God's will to protect your children from disease, because diseases are created by God, you're created by God. If you get the disease, you're supposed to die. Seems a little harsh. But so he started it, and then in the 19th century, there was a guy by the name of Biggs. He started going around, and this is after the smallpox vaccine, same sort of idea, that it's religious-based objection to it, and telling people we shouldn't do this. What's nice, though, is that President Thomas Jefferson really, really liked vaccinations and started the mandating of people getting vaccinated. And this has moved along. People today still have religious objections to it, but there's less of a, it doesn't have the religious fervor that it did back in the 1700s and 1800s. It's moved, it's changed into a different type of fervor. And that began with Andrew Wakefield. And in 1998, he released a study in Britain that claimed the measles, mumps, rubella vaccine caused autism. It doesn't. But because of this, and because of his popularity and his promoting of this, people started to not vaccinate their children. They started to get worried. And it's been really bad over in Britain. The vaccination rates are far below herd immunity. And herd immunity is the concept of you need to have usually about 90% of a community vaccinated to prevent the people who can't be vaccinated. There's about 3 to 5% of the population that is unable to be vaccinated due to various medical reasons. Allergens, or other reactions to it, something genetically, but there's a percentage of people that just cannot. And then there's always a group of people who just won't. And the thing is that you need to basically have it between 85 and 90% of the population to be covered. In 1998 in Britain, the vaccination rate was at 92%. So they were just barely over the herd immunity threshold. After this came out, it dropped into the low 80s. And they started getting massive outbreaks of measles, mumps, and rubella. And because of this fear that it led to autism. It was just a few years ago that it morphed into Jenny McCarthy being the spokesperson for this. The reason being is that she had her child was born in 2002. In 2006, she wrote articles and was planning books to come out where her child was a crystal child and she was an indigo mom. This is an entirely different type of woo. The idea being that these crystal children are telepathic and they have this ability to connect with others and in a more spiritual realm. In 2007, her child was given a diagnosis that he was actually autistic. And then she started to blame the autism based on the injections for the vaccines. Part of the complaint is the number of vaccines that are given to people nowadays. A lot of us, when we were younger, there's less than 10 shots that you would get, 10 vaccines, and today there's over 30 shots that children get in their first few years of life, and so there's this fear of there's too many, it's too soon, and it's overloading their small systems and stuff like that, which is then leading to neurological disorders. The thing is back when we were children, there was only vaccines for less than 10 diseases. We now have vaccines for over 30 diseases. So, and in addition to that, the level of, it's called antigen, which is the inactive or sometimes active virus component that in a vaccine that is used to inoculate yourself. Well, the level of antigen that we received as children was sometimes over 10 times larger than the amount of antigen that children are receiving today. And so they may be getting more shots, but they're getting far less of the actual, disease as part of it. The other part that the anti-vaccination movement goes on to is thimerosal. Thimerosal is a preservative. It's mercury-based, but there's different types of mercury. Usually when people say mercury, we think of the silver stuff that's toxic, and we've learned over the years, like, we shouldn't ever touch this and should never come into contact with it. I can't remember which is which, but there's ethyl mercury and methyl mercury. And the one that's used in the vaccines is the one that's safe. It's merely a preservative, just so that these things will last on the shelf longer, so that more people can get vaccinated.